Hi, everybody. My name is Tyler Crumpler. I'm your moderator today. We're just going to wait a few more seconds for some more people to jump in here. But it looks like we've already got a few people in here. So just for, a little bit of fun, a nice little icebreaker. Curious, using our chat feature, 1 to 5, what's your familiarity with Gravity Sketch? With 5 being like, I'm a champion, I'm in here 3 hours a day in VR, and 1 being like, what's Gravity Sketch? So yeah, would love to hear it. And I'll drop that in the chat as well.
It's also great to or be great to see where you're from. Maybe if you want to drop your location in. I'm actually in the St. Louis, Missouri area, so we
I'm in
got people all
Raleigh.
over the world. Oh,
Yeah, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. To that point, we have people who are registered in Asia, UK, all the way to West Coast. We've got a very, you know, diverse crowd today, which is super exciting. So nice. I'm seeing some fives in here, fours on my good days, twos. Love it, man. We've got some power users in here, some people just starting out. I'm
mhm.
new to Gravity Sketch, so I'm just starting out. Like, so I love to see that. I understand. Then we've got Justin over here, who's like a 10 on the 1 to 5. So, cool
Gotta stay
deal.
humble. I'll just say I'm a 5.
All right, that works too. All right, well, I think, we've got a pretty good amount of people in here. I'm sure some more are going to trickle in, but let's go ahead and get started. So, like I said, everybody, my name's Tyler Crumpler, and I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm on the marketing department here at Gravity Sketch. And so, really quick, before we hop in and start hearing some really cool things that Justin has to share about what he's seen in the industry with our customers, what he's got from his experiences, I just want to go through a few quick housekeeping items, right? So, first of all, for those of you who registered and haven't made it, we're recording this, so you'll hear that later. And for all of you on the call, it's recorded. You can go back and reference it, share that with your network, with other people that you work with, kind of whatever y'all want to do with it, right? So, we'll have that, it'll be available, and we'll send it to you within 48 hours of this session. Also, with that, if you're having any tech issues, go ahead and drop them in the chat. I'll do my best to help you all while the presentation's in flow. Um, and we'll try and get that worked out. So yeah. And then also just finally, we're going to wrap this up here at the end. It's not going to be a full 45-minute session with just a little bit of QA. So you guys are going to have some time to ask Justin questions off of what you've heard today. Going to ask like don't ask some very tactical like how do I do this in Gravity Sketch stuff. We're happy to have that conversation with you all. But I would just ask, reach out to hello@gravitysketch.com and I'll get you in touch with Justin or myself or whoever the right person is, just because it's really hard to have those discussions and do those walkthroughs when we have so many people on the line. So yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and get started on some things. So I want to introduce you all to Justin. He is one of our footwear design consultants. So for those of y'all who don't know what that means, Justin is from industry. So he has 7 years in footwear design experience prior to being at Gravity Sketch. And he was actually using Gravity Sketch as a footwear designer before he came to work here. And I'll let him tell a little bit more about that, which is really cool. But for that context, this means that he is every day working with our customers, helping them solve problems, helping them build their designs and collaborate in Gravity Sketch. So he's really seen everything and he's on the forefront of this journey that we're taking here. So, with that, Justin, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. As Tyler said, I've been in the industry for 7 years. Started as just a line artist, as a footwear designer, and then worked up through learning development, learning line building, managing a full set of shoes in different categories: men's, women's, kids, athletics. I've done even just kids light up shoes, some Nerf shoes, a little bit of everything. So I've got to see the whole gamut of footwear, how they're made, and then also worked my way up to traveling to our Asian factories, seeing, in person how these things are made, working with different people and, communicating through a language barrier, shopping all the material markets, looking at mold making factories. And so I've gotten to see a lot of it in how footwear is made. And really, my intro into 3D was once COVID hit. We couldn't travel to the factories anymore. A lot of those were shut down. We couldn't get physical samples made. So I had to figure out, like, what are we going to do? How are we going to showcase our footwear designs in, a full like digital sample to show our buyers, to give to our salespeople, to get alignment from all the stakeholders, marketing, developers, engineers, factory partners. And that's where I started my 3D journey. Was I had already had some Rhino experience from school, just as graphic design, industrial designer, and so I started pushing myself to learn 3D. And then I eventually found Gravity Sketch, which was a great tool because all these other programs, they were just too, especially if you open like Blender nowadays, it's great, it's free, but there's so many different toolbars and you can get lost really fast, especially going from 2D to 3D. So having just a headset and controllers and intuitively, it's like working around a taped up last almost, but instead of having the physical sample, I like to tell people it's kind of like the napkin dimension. You just hop into this VR world and you have an endless amount of paper and ink that you're never going to run out of. So that's where I started my journey and ended up finding Gravity Sketch. I've been on the team for 8 months now and working with some of the biggest names in footwear, and it's been such a blast.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And we're talking a lot about like the whole idea of this webinar, right? Is moving from 2D to 3D communication, right? And we're not by that saying like don't do 2D sketching anymore. Like we absolutely think there's a place for that, right? But we also think that there's this whole other world of collaboration to your point, like you were saying in COVID. So, you know, um, in footwear specifically, there's a lot of working across time zones with people in factories and other areas and all of these things. And, one of the cool things about this and moving your sketch to 3D is, it cuts out on a lot of time for you all, right? Like, I mean, kind of how has Gravity Sketch changed the way that you're seeing others in the industry, or even when yourself was doing it, working with like their modelers, factories, their teammates to improve that collaboration? How does 3D sketching change that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the communication and collaboration aspect. The fact that I can get into a VR room with somebody else, either across the states, if I'm East Coast, they're West Coast, or even with our factory partners in Asia, if we can review the same file and it's no longer like I call it this like throwing it over the fence. Like you would usually just send off the email and the file and hope they understand everything, and worst case scenario, you're either hopping on a call at midnight or you're flying all the way to, Asia and working with them in factory. But now, the time to market has been slashed. Every every footwear supplier and honestly almost every type of product has gotten to the point where they want to get to market a lot faster from their initial designs. So bringing in those other collaborators, factory partners, marketing, everyone into the process at a really early stage and having a full understanding of that design intent right from the get-go has been really powerful in saving time and later communication, developing assets that need to be communicated with our factory partners, or even once we get to the revision process, instead of having to go to the steel shop and standing behind somebody else doing the 3D design, I can hop into a VR room with them and quickly point out the areas that I think need to be changed or updated, and they can come back and say, oh, this isn't manufacturable the way you've designed it, so you need to make some edits here. And at that point, I'm not wasting any time building a tech pack or putting together a bunch of other, kind of like this clerical information that designers have started inputting. It's really just being able to get into the room with that design and having a fuller understanding of it. That way, we can make better decisions faster and earlier in the process.
Oh man, see, I love that. And you've given me so many things I want to unpack here within that. Like I'm hearing you talk about time to value and increasing collaboration, design intent. Let's start there just first and foremost. One of the things you talked about was preserving that design intent, right? Throughout the process. And I've been at Gravity Sketch for 2 months now. I've been very fortunate to get to spend a lot of time with our footwear and automotive customers in market, going to their offices, things like that.
Hmm.
And one of the things I keep hearing is from our customers and from our users is like, it used to be I would have this idea and I would send this sketch, and the modeler just like it wouldn't be my original idea, right? And Gravity Sketch changes that because you're sharing a 2D, two scale model with them right out of the gate, right? And so I'm kind of curious to hear a little bit more about like what you're seeing around that and how that's really improving not only the time to value, but the designer's experience in
Hmm.
getting their ideas out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one that's going to hit home with a lot of designers. And where we're at in the process, what I've observed is so many people they will design something awesome, get, sign off on it, pass it to developer, and there's so many rounds of revisions back and forth. Somebody's not really translating this correctly, or especially that step from 2D to 3D when you're not able to have your own hand in it, a lot gets lost in translation. You end up doing a bunch of rounds of revision back and forth, and because of these time crunches, I'm seeing designers like they're starting to get defeated because they're just signing off on stuff saying this is good enough. It's not what I initially designed, but it's better than, the first, second, third, fourth, seventh, revision we went through. So let's just go with it because I got to get started on a new project. So what we're seeing now is because you have a fuller control of, what you're passing off and clear communication, even if it's not the final thing you're going to pass to production. If you, initially with just a 2D tech pack only got to like the 60% mark and then relied on, developers, factory partners, everyone to do the 40% of translating that into a 3D process, there's a lot that can go wrong, or necessarily wrong, but just miscommunication, people, talking past each other or not really understanding like how this lateral view is going to wrap onto the top view. But now with a 3D sketch, in not even a full model, it can be something that's really loose. You can convey a lot more information all in just, one file, one package, and be able to have that and turn it around, see the lateral view, see how exactly a toe cap's going to wrap around and be asymmetrical. And instead of having to draw three different views of it, you have that one sketch that you can reuse in all those different scenarios. Spin it around, take a screenshot, add that to your tech pack if you need to have, clear communication on it.
Which is so huge, right? Like, and it's almost like we're muddying the waters a little bit between designers and devs because they're able to realize so quickly. Like, the example that has always really rung home with me is like in a car, right? You put your USB port right here in the 2D sketch, but you realize that somebody has to reach all the way like this. You can't
Mhm.
do that while you're driving, right? It just like cuts down on that iteration so much. I know where you're talking about footwear, but that one just I feel like most people have driven a car, or been in a car, and that one always just rings heavy to me. But
Mhm.
you're talking about showing some of this iterative process, and I think you've got something that you actually prepared that's really cool that you can show around like sketching all the way to modeling a little bit within Gravity Sketch. I'd love for you to show that off in one of the collab room you put together for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me pull that up. And just a reminder for the chat here, there's a Q&A section. If you feel free, just go over there, enter any questions you have, and we can make this interactive too. We don't have to wait all the way to the end. If there's something that as soon as we say you want to know more, like just let us know right there, and we can start to pull in some of those questions.
Yeah, let's do it. I love that. So start dropping them in there, everyone. Let's go for it.
Yeah. So this is an overview of a full process from really loose sketch on the left all the way to a final model on the right. So this is actually just before we get started. This is Screen Collab. So this is one of the features of a Gravity Sketch. So instead of having a completely separate presentation tool or anything else, like leave it in Gravity Sketch, do it all inside of there, and you're not pulling back and forth. But let's jump into it. So you can see I've brought in a mood board here, and this was actually a project done by one of our other design consultants. His name's Austin White, but I just figured I'd highlight what he put together and continue to reuse it since it's such a great process that he has. So bringing in the mood board and really staying loose with these sketches. We can import last tooling files or 3D scans. If you have something that's a carry forward item, you can 3D scan that whole thing, even with just something like a phone app. You don't have to have a full booth or cameras and lighting set up. You can do it even just at your desk and home, or if you're a student, just in your dorm. And you can get some really nice scans from there to sketch around, and then you have the full 3D form and shape. But yeah, just really using that last as a reference and staying loose and really treating this just like your napkin sketch. And then from here, after you have some different ideas, taking it further into this refined sketch. Really kind of if that was the penciling, this is the inking of it, nailing down what your design is going to be, where those lines are going to be. And you can see here it's not even fully modeled, but we blocked it out on the inside with just flat white shapes. And then really quickly to still have that like loose industrial design sketch type feel. We have different airbrush techniques and shading things that you can do inside a gravity sketch to add some more life to it as well.
Well,
And
and one thing I
yeah,
wanna
what's
pull out real quick, Justin, like, for everyone on this webinar, like, I'm not a designer, but one of the things I noticed back on that first sketch, right, you have a foot in there, so it's to scale a little bit here, right? Whereas, like, in that
Mhm.
first napkin stage, I imagine most designers are, there is no scale. It's just what's in your mind. That's really cool, and that's something I've never really noticed before. So,
Yeah, and just to highlight that a little bit more for people who aren't in the footwear industry, this last here, actually, let me show you another cool feature. We got this laser pointer. So
ooh,
this last, this is what the they're going to use in production to really pull down the materials around it. It has the final shape, the full form of what that shoe is going to be, and these each footwear company has their own set of lasts. It's kind of like a proprietary thing. Like it's it is the DNA of what this shoe will become. So it's important because this is what they're going to use later in production. So as Tyler said, if you're starting with that, then you already know that your design is to scale, to proportion, and you're not going to have to do a lot of translating from a very loose thumbnail sketch that has a lot of emotion to this. But still, here you can have all of that emotion, and you can show different speed lines and forms here really loosely, even while staying true to what that last is.
yeah, I love this. Damon just said the last is first.
Yeah,
Yeah,
last first. Yep.
beautiful.
But yeah, then using that refined sketch and you can turn it, take all of your screenshots, and like we said earlier, it's Gravity Sketch isn't here to cut out everything else you've already learned in, being a designer and being proficient with other tools. You could take these screenshots and, take them to Procreate, Illustrator, Photoshop, do all of your rendering, all of your texturing, add all the details you need. But this, with a very quick, just 30-minute sketch gives you every single angle versus having to just draw the lateral view and then go back, redraw a medial view and then try to make both those views match up on the top view. It takes a lot of that guesswork, and there's a lot of cognitive load that you have to do trying to translate how this wraps around. Emily asked, "How long does this process take?" And so, if we're talking about these loose sketches, like if I'm just iterating really quickly, I could do just a single loose sketch in 20 minutes or less. And then to take that, duplicate it, pull it apart, think about it, how you might work on paper and pen or an Illustrator where you have several different artboards and just kind of drag those down and make different iterations. Inside of an hour, you can have 4 or 5 different really loose sketches and then take one into this refined sketch here. And then
Yeah,
beyond that, there's also these, we call them like loose surface models. So this, if I zoom in here, you're gonna see like this isn't a perfect model. This is really to convey the intent of the design and use it in your design review one. And at this point, just these screenshots straight out of Gravity Sketch with quick airbrushing techniques, they look really solid. And to go back in on Photoshop or something and add textures would be really fast, or straight into Procreate. We can export these models out, and you can either use them in just 2D or 3D as well. And then from here, if you're all approved to go forward, taking this and then building a full model out of it. So doing the midsole, a sole plate as well, all the different parts and pieces. And you can see we even have like quick call outs here. And what's nice about this is these 3D assets can be used further down the pipeline. So even for marketing or using this for just getting complete sign off from everyone before going to your physical sample. Exporting these out, all of this data that we build in Gravity Sketch can be directly imported to Rhino, Blender, a bunch of different applications. I know New Balance uses Moto. They talked about it in the Around Design Festival that we hosted earlier this year. It's they have some really solid workflows, and what you can do is export this straight from Gravity Sketch into Keyshot, Adobe Substance, and add all of your really nice lighting, rendering textures, or any textures that you have applied in Gravity Sketch will also transfer out of Gravity Sketch. And
Uh,
then beyond this, oh, sorry, what was that,
oh,
Tyler?
just real quick, we've got quite a few questions coming in over here in the Q&A side. So, one real quick, easy one to answer from Samuel. Are we using landing pad POV cameras to present? We should take that one.
Yeah, yep. So these are we call them viewpoints. So I've set up viewpoints in here, and you can just like if I click the left and right arrows through this, it's like a narrated presentation then. And then I'm also just using, the mouse and orbiting around these. If you don't know, you can really quickly just like if I want to pin to this model and talk about it, if I double click on it, it'll zoom right into it. It becomes the center axis. We can move it around. So it's a really solid presentation tool as well. You don't have to, export all of these out and put them on a separate board to review. It's you can do this collaboratively with, several designers, a manager, anyone you want to bring in.
Yeah, and I mean, just to add to that a little bit, as part of my onboarding process, I'm being tasked with designing a North Face motorcycle, right? Just like a very random thing, just kind of make it fun. And Justin is actually one of the people who is judging me. You know, talking about time to value, like I'm already to the point where I am able to do. It's not a great bike, but it is a bike, and I am not a designer by any means, right? If you go look at me on LinkedIn, I have a communications degree, so like you can get into this pretty quickly, which is cool to see. I'm setting up these viewpoints and things like I'm inviting Justin and other people from our company who are experts to help me, to give me advice, to kind of guide me on that, which is the value of, being able to get people into that process early. And so I guess just like another question, I think you touched on this a little bit. How does like Blender or other 3D softwares work into this process? I think you touched on that a little bit, but if you want to recap it.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I move on to that, though, I was just kind of showing here so everybody sees what's happening on screen. With these viewpoints and everything straight on screen collab, you can make annotations, comments, and somebody could be in VR. Maybe Tyler did all this shoe design, so he's showcasing it from VR, and I'm just reviewing on desktop. I can leave comments. I can make all these different changes. Say, oh, we got to drop the heel cap height down here, but this is going to work just like any other, notification system or comment system. Somebody could come in here and respond to this, or if this has been done, you can even resolve all of your different comments here, and then you'll get notifications, emails back and forth. So it's just a really smooth way to work back and forth.
Yeah.
And then Tyler asked about, how does this work with Blender, Rhino? I would recommend just if you're doing a like full model like this, as the export settings, FBX, full data, and then for the control mesh, you can get that out if you're building sub D objects. Control mesh, render mesh, it has UVs already baked in, and actually a big thing that we just updated was how UVs map and like textures map onto sub D objects. So we're continuously reworking this, and any feedback we hear from whether it be our big footwear and just partners or even just the community as well. We love hearing from you guys. We take that into consideration, throw it back to our engineering and product team, and they continue to knock out great features and make some new edits and changes.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's very cool to see that. And so, real quick, I think we can do a 2-for-1 on questions here. Two people asked about modeling in other sizes. So, one person's saying they like to model in multiple sizes just to see it, and someone else was saying that they like to put their shoes into multiple sizes for their tech packs. So, just curious, how does that work in this scenario?
Yeah, so we've actually one of the most recent features we added is called non-proportional scaling. So there's not going to be anything automated that you can just hit a size and it's automatically going to shrink down. There's still a lot you're going to have to do, especially if you're going from like a men's shoe and adapting it to a boy's shoe. There's going to have to be a lot of proportional changes there. But with the proportional editing feature, you can really quickly shrink down individual objects, the full group of all the different layers there, and we also have a measurement tool. So if you need to get specific measurements or a specific stack height for a midsole, you can add those and then build to that or shrink down your existing models to that. Also, there's just like the soft select features for like grabbing, and it's more of like a sculpting approach to modeling. But even taking these sub D and NURBS objects, you can really quickly with soft select just push them in and shrink them and really mold it into being that shape that you want. So you don't have to completely rebuild a new size for that shoe.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Cool. I'll let you hop into this real quick, and then we'll hit some more questions after you go through this. So
Yeah, so I just wanted to showcase like how you can use these assets then to communicate and also bring it into like a 3D tech pack, really the next evolution of what we showcase to developers, to factory partners. If you have a really complex piece that you need to have an exploded view, instead of drawing all the different layers on 2D shell patterns or anything, you can really easily pull it apart just to convey ideas. And maybe you're still aligning on how this is going to work or your initial design. It really helps understanding. And one thing we're seeing is people are traditional 2D to 3D designers, they're now figuring out how things are going to be manufactured and built. And so that also saves a lot of the time just because they're doing this problem solving live. And it's great to be able to just take this one shoe and just literally pull pieces apart, and see how it's all going to come together. And then just a few other aspects here, using this just to showcase all of your different materials, thicknesses, bringing in, whether it be mold textures and highlighting where those are going to be, where they sit, especially for like this molded toe cap here. It's a really quick way to have a lot of data, and you can see you don't have to showcase just the pretty model all the time. Like use those pieces again here to communicate effectively to your partners downstream. And then, here's just some shots of taking that model and orthographic screenshots of it and building your traditional 2D tech pack as well. I fully recognize that we're not going to have that dream state workflow right out of the gate. We still have to work in the real world and kind of, what the rest of our partners know right now. So it's not adding a whole new layer that you have to do where it's like, oh, I do the 2D and I do the 3D and I got to go back. It's no, just use that same 3D sketch that you started with and then refined here and take this back into, just orthographic screenshots into the classic way that you might communicate.
well, and I think this is really important, what you just hit on, and what a lot of these questions are getting at. One of the questions I hear the most from people that we're working with in the industry is like, how do you replace Blender? How do you replace Rhino? Like, we don't really. We are
Mhm.
another piece to the puzzle to help you communicate more effectively. It's not about, just completely ripping out and making you have to go through a whole new workflow, right? And so I think you just
Right.
illustrated that perfectly through this and showing how all of these like tools work together, right? And that's like another great segue into one of these questions, and it's which tools are you using mostly for these examples? And I mean, I'm gonna guess, right? Like, go ahead and answer for us. I'd love to hear what you have to say on that. So
Yeah, for all the sketching and modeling, I only use Gravity Sketch. I'm only taking out of Gravity Sketch once I need to do rendering or animations. And past that, I'm usually going into either the Adobe Substance, suite using uh, Painter and Stager to do all my materials, textures, and then renders and animations, or taking that and going into Blender. And if I need to do a lot more like serious animation or different flybys, or maybe I do a really quick loose midsole model that I know I want to do some parametric modeling on. You can plug that into Rhino and then use Grasshopper to affect all those surfaces, and maybe even take it into Keyshot as well and do some displacement maps and height maps as well, just to get those really nailed down final details of all the model and what you really want to showcase. So just to tag on there, like Gravity Sketch isn't going to get you those photorealistic renders, but we tie in really nicely into those programs that do. And so, like, our goal is to make that transition from Gravity Sketch over to those seamless. And that's why we made sure, like, the data integration is spot on, and all the info that you need, UV maps, those separate pieces, materials, all the layer data information transfers over as well. That way, it's as seamless as possible.
and then you bring it
Um,
back to Gravity Sketch. You can collaborate with your peers on it, right? Like, that's the way
yep.
it goes in and out, and so it's perfect. And actually, you just gave us a perfect segue into another question in here. So it's like, where can we learn more about the recent UV functionality? And you just mentioned UV, so like I think that's a perfect segue. Like,
Yep. We're always updating our YouTube channel. We have a blog going as well, and we're actually putting a more effort into like how do we communicate what releases we are we're putting out and what new features. And so hopefully, I don't know what we finally decided on yet. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but we're looking at how can we revamp everything inside of Gravity Sketch and maybe even add a little section that's specifically for new features and demos or walkthroughs and or tutorials all in app for you guys.
Lots of cool stuff coming there as someone working on that project. So stay tuned, everybody. Yeah, and like I know we're at time here, but keep the questions coming. We've got some more time that we can stick in here. I've got one more question I want to ask Justin for sure. But another cool question here. So what is the surfacing timeline like for something like what you just shared with all of us in Gravity Sketch? Like what does that really look like?
Yeah, so after I have a like finalized, refined sketch, I can surface that in depending on how complex it is. So something like the sketch I was showing, you can do that inside of an hour and have it fully surfaced in like all those different modeled pieces. The fact that we have the ribbon stroke that can be converted into a sub D object and then thickened and offset, a lot of those tools they work very cohesively with each other, and we've added features to make it really easy to go from just a flat single surface into a full, shape with, thickness as well. And then just how easy it is to manipulate all of the different, edge loops, control points inside of Gravity Sketch and lock them to a specific axis with Smart Move, or, like I said about the soft select tool. Maybe you have a model, but after you model it, I know I've done this before. I'm not a perfect designer. I'll have a 3D sketch and then I'll model it, and then some of the proportions and shapes are just not looking right. So instead of remodeling the whole thing, you can really quickly kind of just like sculpt it into the shape that you want.
Nice. Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense and really great. So, yeah, y'all, I think that's all the questions we had. So, keep them coming. I'm going to ask Justin one more question just on the what I had prepared to ask him to wrap us up. And I think it's an interesting one. So, we're talking about moving from 2D to 3D design communication and using a communication platform versus just a design platform, which I think is a very new concept for everybody, right? And it's something that, while a lot of the big players in the footwear space have already started to make that jump and really invest there. It's something that's still new to the vast majority of the industry. And so I'm just curious, like, as you're working with some of these really early adopters and the really big names that everyone knows and thinks about when it's footwear, like, what exactly do you see as those future trends? Like, what are you seeing that they're already introducing that's like really pushing that boundary, or even that you just think might be super relevant as someone on the forefront? So
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of really cool innovations I'm seeing. So one partner that we have, Adidas, they've done a few different presentations with us. One called Future Natural. They built a full like presentation, like not even just a room, like a whole environment basically. And they showcased exactly how they went from scanning somebody's leg and the whole foot and building around that, sketching around it, bringing in all their different designers, design directors, marketing, and talking about that and going straight from that project into producing it. It's a shoe that you can buy even currently today, and they did all of it inside of Gravity Sketch before passing it off for factory communication. And seeing how designers can really tell a fully immersive story like they have never been able to before. And then some of the other, footwear partners that I'm working with, they're for even just like design kickoff, they're doing a full, basically an animation inside of just using screen collab and those viewpoints that I was clicking through, just setting them up with their different designs. And it's kind of like a little trail hiking scene. It's really cool. I can't give any more details than that. I wish I could share it, but um, and then some other things like New Balance is really pioneering their full like digital first mindset is what they're talking about is cutting out so many different rounds of sampling and revisions and finalizing what they want in digital first using Gravity Sketch and even having in VR review. So Tyler mentioned bringing those back in after you've added all those nice textures and renders or even a 3D scan of a shoe. You can bring those into Gravity Sketch and kind of populate like a full merchandising display or even set up a whole storefront, and you can really evaluate how those shoes look on the shelf or on an end cap, and what the different displays or how they might work with the marketing to really showcase new features or technologies that are inside of the shoe that you can't even see as a consumer.
Well, and I mean, part of what you also showed is like, a lot of what people think of when they think of Gravity Sketch and moving to 3D design communication is like, I need a headset, right? You just showed everybody on here using Screen Collab how you don't have to have a headset to do reviews and walk through this stuff, right? And like, a lot of the questions we're getting asked here today are product functionality, right? And one of the things I will say is, I've shared hello@gravitysketch.com as an email. My email is tyler.crumpler@gravitysketch.com. Like, we're always happy to help people and show them and help them find ways to get into VR, even if they don't have a headset and things like that. So, shoot me an email, shoot that hello@gravitysketch.com an email, and we'll help you. We'll get you in touch with the person who can help you answer a lot of these product functionality questions, or even help you figure out how to do some of this on your own if you're trying to make that jump. Like, we love collaborating with our community, right? And so anybody who's got any of those questions after the fact, like, bring them on in. And I think we're coming up at 6 minutes past. I really appreciate everybody, the collaboration for joining us, all of that good stuff. Like I shared, we're going to share the recording. But one more question before we hop off here, Justin, and wrap it up. And it's do you use Gravity Sketch by iPad or VR headset, or both?
I use both, but most of my time I'm spending in the VR headset. You just can't beat like being in the fully immersive 3D environment, especially when we're talking about building a product that in the end goal is something 3D. You know,
Yep.
being able to even scale up to the point where I can sit inside the shoe and look at how this tongue or the collar lining is going to be put together, or how a specific webbing is tied under the midsole. Like you just can't beat that. I mean, I love the iPad app, and if I'm on the go or I'm somewhere I can't use VR, like you can't beat that then because anything I sketch on the iPad app, I can immediately bring straight into VR, or it can already be a really quick 3D sketch model. And then all of those lines and strokes I built, I can edit straight in VR. It's not like I have to redraw it. So, um, just to wrap it up, VR probably where 95% of my time is.
Yeah, makes sense. And I mean, I will say, as someone who's done it, that is certainly the most fun. Like, it is very cool to get in there. There's a few more questions that were just asked. I took a picture of those. We have them, and I will follow up with you all directly about those. Just want to thank Justin for your time today, your expertise. Like I said to everybody on the call, if you want to learn more, feel free to reach out to that hello@gravitysketch.com. Me, Justin, we're always happy to talk with everybody. We really appreciate you all hopping on here as well, and just want to share. This is just the first webinar in a series. We have one that's going to be I saw some people from the footwear or the automotive industry in here. We have the next one with automotive coming up here in April that I'll be sharing very shortly. So be on the lookout for that, and some other really cool things that we have as we're moving into the coming months. And I just want to thank everybody and Justin for their time today, and their collaboration. Looking forward to getting to do more with you all. So
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been a blast. I also just shared my LinkedIn. If anyone in the chat wants to go ahead and add me, you got, questions you want to ask me directly, feel free to reach out. I Main thing is I joined Gravity Sketch because I love the footwear industry and the community, and I wanted to, help
cool.
transform the industry. And so that's instead of just staying inside of the industry and using Gravity Sketch, I figured what better way than be a part of the team and start rolling it out and teaching new people. So yeah, whether you're a student looking to how to get into the industry or you're already a professional, like I'd love to connect with you and answer any questions you have too. So thanks for your time. And I know you guys didn't have to sit through a whole 40-minute conversation and, waste your day with us, but I'm glad you did. So I hope
Yeah,
you
yeah.
learned something here.
We appreciate it, and hopefully there was some value in there. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your week.